Millionaire CEO runs into his black ex-wife at a coffee shop with twins who look just like him. "Mama, why is that man looking at us funny?" The innocent voice of a 6-year-old boy cut through the bustling coffee shop like a blade, causing every head to turn. But for Marcus Ashford, those words weren't just a question, they were the sound of his entire world crashing down. "Cairo, baby, don't stare," came the familiar voice that still haunted his dreams 7 years later. "But Mama, he has eyes just like mine. And Zara's too." The silence that followed was deafening. Across the crowded cafe, two pairs of amber eyes, exact replicas of his own, stared back at him with innocent curiosity, while their mother's gaze burned with 7 years of pain, anger, and secrets that could destroy everything. What happens when a man discovers he's been living a lie? When the children he never knew existed are standing right in front of him? And when the woman he abandoned is the only one holding the key to his redemption? Before we dive into this incredible story of second chances and hidden truths, tell us in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is right now. And if you believe that some encounters are destined to change everything, hit that subscribe button so you never miss a single story from Lux Love Chronicles. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this unfolds. Now, let's begin this journey. The aroma of freshly ground Ethiopian coffee beans filled the air at Meridian Café, one of Manhattan's most exclusive coffee houses. At 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon, the place buzzed with the energy of successful people conducting successful business. Laptops clicked, phones buzzed, and conversations flowed in that particular rhythm of those who moved mountains with their words. Marcus Ashford sat in his usual corner booth, the one that offered him a perfect view of the entrance, while keeping him partially hidden from the casual observer. His Armani suit, tailored to perfection, couldn't quite hide the tension in his shoulders as he stared at the contract spread before him, a deal worth $200 million that should have had his complete attention. But focus had become a luxury he couldn't afford lately. The Ashford tech empire he'd built from nothing now dominated 3 continents, employed over 50,000 people, and generated more wealth in a quarter than most companies saw in a lifetime. At 35, Marcus had achieved everything he'd ever dreamed of and more. So why did he feel so empty? His fingers drummed against the mahogany table as he lifted his espresso, imported directly from his private plantation in Colombia, and took a sip that tasted like ash in his mouth. Success, he'd learned, was a lonely companion. "Mr. Ashford," his assistant's voice crackled through his Bluetooth earpiece, "the Singapore investors are ready for the video conference." "Should I patch them through?" "Give me 5 more minutes, Rebecca," Marcus replied, his voice carrying that commanding tone that made CEOs across the globe defer to his judgment. "And reschedule my 4 p.m. with the board. Something's come up." Nothing had come up. Nothing ever came up anymore. Every day blended into the next in an endless cycle of meetings, acquisitions, and victories that felt increasingly hollow. He was about to return to the contract when the sound stopped him cold. Laughter. Pure, melodic, and achingly familiar. Marcus's head snapped up, and every carefully constructed wall he built around his heart crumbled in an instant. There, standing in the doorway like a vision from his most treasured memories, was Amara Williams. Time didn't just stop, it rewound 7 years in the space of a heartbeat. She looked magnificent. Her natural curls caught the afternoon sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, creating a halo effect that made her dark skin glow with an inner radiance. She wore a flowing emerald dress that complemented her complexion beautifully, and when she smiled at something someone said, Marcus felt his chest tighten with a pain so sharp it nearly brought him to his knees. But it wasn't Amara alone that made his world tilt off its axis. Flanking her like small guardians were 2 children, a boy and a girl who couldn't have been older than 6 or 7. The resemblance hit him like a physical blow. The boy had Marcus's strong jawline and serious expression, while the girl possessed Amara's delicate features mixed with something unmistakably his own. Their eyes. Dear God, their eyes. Amber. The exact shade that stared back at him from mirrors every morning, inherited from his grandmother and as distinctive as a fingerprint. "No," Marcus whispered, his hands beginning to tremble. "No, it can't be." But even as denial fought for space in his mind, the mathematics were irrefutable. 7 years ago, he'd walked away from the greatest love of his life. 7 years ago, in his arrogance and ambition, he convinced himself that Amara would be better off without him. 7 years ago, he'd made the biggest mistake of his life. "Mama, can we get the chocolate croissants?" the little girl asked, her voice carrying that same musical quality that had made him fall in love with her mother's laughter all those years ago. "Of course, baby girl," Amara replied, and Marcus nearly sobbed at the sound. Her voice was exactly as he remembered, warm honey with undertones that could make a man believe in forever. "Cairo, what would you like?" "Cairo." The boy's name was Cairo. "Just regular coffee, Mama." The boy replied with a maturity that seemed beyond his years. "I'm not really hungry." "Nonsense," Amara said gently, ruffling his hair with a tenderness that spoke of countless mornings, bedtime stories, and unconditional love. "You're a growing boy. How about a muffin?" Marcus watched this domestic scene unfold with growing desperation. They looked happy, complete, a perfect family unit that had somehow existed without him for years. His phone buzzed with another urgent message from Rebecca, but Marcus couldn't have cared less about Singapore or board meetings or the $200 million deal sitting forgotten on his table. His entire universe had narrowed to the three people standing 30 feet away, the family he'd never known he had. The boy, Cairo, was the first to notice him staring. "Mama," he said, tugging on Amara's dress, "why is that man looking at us funny?" The question carried across the cafe with devastating clarity, and Marcus watched as Amara's entire body went rigid. Her head turned slowly, almost reluctantly, until their eyes met across the crowded space. The recognition was instant and mutual. 7 years collapsed into nothing. Marcus was 28 again, watching Amara paint in their shared apartment, sunlight streaming through windows as she hummed unconsciously, wearing nothing but his MIT t-shirt and a smile that promised forever. He was holding her close after making love, breathing in her scent of vanilla and jasmine, whispering promises about the future they'd build together. He was breaking both their hearts by walking away when she needed him most. "Marcus," Amara breathed, and even across the distance, he could see the color drain from her face. The little girl, what had Amara called her? Zara, looked between her mother and the stranger with innocent curiosity. "Mama, do you know him?" For a moment that stretched into eternity, Amara didn't respond. Her hands instinctively moved to her children's shoulders, a protective gesture that spoke volumes about the woman she'd become. When she finally spoke, her voice was carefully controlled. "Yes, baby. I know him." Something in her tone made both children look at Marcus with renewed interest. Cairo stepped slightly forward, his fearless curiosity reminding Marcus painfully of his own childhood need to understand everything around him. "You have eyes like mine," Cairo observed with the straightforward honesty that only children possessed. "And Zara's too." The innocent observation hung in the air like a revelation that could change everything. Marcus felt his knees threaten to buckle under the weight of 7 years of choices, of missed birthdays and first steps and bedtime stories that belonged to someone else. Or rather, belonged to him but had been given away through his own cowardice. Marcus stood slowly, his legs unsteady as he tried to process the magnitude of what he was seeing. The contract, the meeting, the empire he'd built, none of it mattered now. Nothing mattered except the truth staring back at him through 2 pairs of amber eyes. Amara seemed to make a decision. With fluid grace that he remembered from their dancing nights at small jazz clubs, she approached his table, her children flanking her like small guardians who didn't quite understand what they were protecting their mother from. "Hello, Marcus," she said, her voice carefully neutral but carrying undertones that sent electricity down his spine. "It's been a long time." "Amara." Her name escaped his lips like a confession, like a prayer, like the answer to every question he'd never known how to ask. He wanted to say 1,000 things, apologies, explanations, declarations, but only one question mattered. His gaze dropped to the children, then back to her face. "Are they?" "Yes." The word cut through the air with finality that left no room for doubt or denial. "This is Zara and this is Cairo. They're 6 years old." Marcus's mind raced backward to that night, their last night together before pride and miscommunication and his own damning fear had torn them apart. The night he'd held her against him, skin to skin, hearts beating in perfect synchronization, making love with a desperate intensity that had left them both shaking and gasping each other's names like salvation. The night he'd whispered promises he'd been too terrified to keep. The night their children had been conceived. "Mama," Zara tugged on Amara's dress, her voice carrying that universal childhood curiosity that demanded immediate answers. "Who is he?" Amara's eyes never left Marcus's face as she knelt to her daughter's level, her movements graceful despite the obvious emotional turmoil coursing through her. This is someone Mama used to know. Someone very important. The carefully chosen words told Marcus everything about the woman she'd become, protective, wise, putting their children's emotional well-being above everything else, including her own pain. She'd learned to be both mother and father, to shield them from truths they weren't ready to understand. Cairo stepped closer to Marcus, studying him with an intensity that was almost unsettling. The boy possessed that fearless curiosity of childhood, but there was something else in his expression, a gravity that seemed beyond his years. "You look sad," Cairo said matter-of-factly. "Are you okay?" The innocent question nearly broke Marcus completely. Here was his son, showing concern for a stranger's well-being with the pure empathy that only children possessed. Marcus's voice cracked. He cleared his throat and tried again, kneeling down so he was at eye level with both children. "I'm better now. Meeting you both has made me very happy." "Really?" Zara asked, her smile brightening. "Mama says meeting new people is like finding treasures." "Your mama is very wise," Marcus replied, his eyes finding Amara's again. "She always was." Something flickered in Amara's expression, surprise, perhaps, or the faintest hint of the girl she used to be before life had taught her to be so careful with her heart. "Would you?" Marcus's voice trembled despite every effort to control it. "Would you like to sit? Just for a few minutes?" Amara hesitated, her internal struggle visible in the tightness around her eyes, the way her hands moved protectively toward her children. Marcus could see her weighing risks, measuring the potential for hurt against the children's obvious curiosity. Finally, she nodded. 10 minutes. The children need to get home soon. They found a larger corner table away from the afternoon crowd, and Marcus helped Zara into her chair, marveling at how small and perfect she was. When she giggled at his gentle joke about the wobbly table leg, the sound went straight to his heart like an arrow finding its target. Cairo remained more reserved, watching Marcus with that intensity that reminded him painfully of his own childhood wariness around strangers. But there was curiosity there too, an intelligence that sparkled in those familiar amber eyes. "You talk like Mama," Zara observed, tilting her head as she studied Marcus. "All proper and stuff." Amara laughed despite herself, a sound that transported Marcus instantly back to Sunday mornings in their old apartment, lazy hours spent in bed talking about dreams and futures that had felt so attainable then. "Zara has very good ears," Amara explained, pride evident in her voice. "She notices everything." "I can see that," Marcus replied, unable to take his eyes off either child. They were perfect, beautiful, intelligent, curious, kind. Everything he would have hoped for and more. "And Cairo? What do you like to do?" "I build things," Cairo replied, some of his reserve melting under Marcus's genuine interest. "Cities and bridges and rockets. Mama says I'm going to be an engineer like." He stopped abruptly, glancing at his mother. "Like who?" Marcus asked gently. "Like someone we know," Amara intervened smoothly, but Marcus caught the flash of pain in her eyes. The implication hit him like a physical blow. She'd told them about him. Somehow, in some way, his children knew they had a father who was an engineer, who built things, who existed somewhere in the world but wasn't with them. "Building things is important work," Marcus said carefully, his throat tight with emotion. "The world needs people who can create and fix and make things better." Cairo's face lit up with the first genuine smile he directed at Marcus. "That's exactly what Mama says." "Your mama is a very smart woman," Marcus replied, his eyes finding Amara's again. "She always knows the right thing to say." "Are you famous?" Zara asked suddenly, her eyes taking in Marcus's expensive suit and watch. "You look like the people on TV." Amara tensed slightly, clearly not wanting this conversation to venture into territory that might be difficult to explain later. "I work with computers and technology," Marcus replied diplomatically. "It's not very exciting, I'm afraid." "Computers are awesome," Cairo exclaimed, his earlier reserve completely forgotten. "I want to learn programming. Mama said she'll get me lessons when I'm older." Marcus felt his heart clench. Programming. His son wanted to learn programming, and Marcus, who could have taught him everything, who could have spent hours showing him the magic of code and creation, was a stranger making small talk in a coffee shop. "That's wonderful," Marcus managed. "Programming is like giving instructions to a very smart but literal friend. You have to be precise and creative at the same time." "Cool," both children said simultaneously, then looked at each other and burst into giggles. They do that a lot, Amara said softly, and Marcus could hear years of love and exasperation and pure joy in those simple words. Twin telepathy, I call it. Twins. The word hit Marcus with unexpected force. Not just children, but twins. Two lives created in one moment of perfect love, carried and born and raised by the woman he'd abandoned when she needed him most. Amara, he started, then stopped, acutely aware of small ears listening to every word. I know, she said quietly, understanding exactly what he couldn't say. I know. The 10 minutes passed far too quickly. Marcus found himself memorizing every detail, the way Zara's nose crinkled when she laughed, how Cairo's brow furrowed when he was thinking seriously about something, the protective way Amara watched both children while maintaining careful emotional distance from him. When Amara glanced at her watch and announced they needed to leave, Marcus felt panic rising in his chest. Wait, he said, standing as they prepared to go. Please. I know I have no right to ask, but... He looked at the children, then back at Amara. Could I see them again? Properly. The question hung in the air like a prayer waiting for an answer that could change everything or destroy what little hope he had left. Amara stared at their joined hands, hers trembling slightly, as steady despite the emotional earthquake that had just shattered both their worlds. The children stood beside her, sensing the undercurrent of adult emotions they couldn't quite understand, but feeling the importance of this moment nonetheless. They don't know, Marcus, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. About you. I've told them their father was someone who loved them but couldn't be with us. The careful phrasing cut through Marcus like a blade. Even in her pain, even after everything he'd put her through, she'd protected him in their children's eyes. She could have painted him as the villain, could have made them hate the father who'd abandoned them before they were even born. Instead, she'd chosen grace. I understand if you don't trust me, Marcus said quietly, his eyes never leaving hers. I understand if you hate me. I don't hate you, Amara whispered, and the admission seemed to cost her something precious. That would be easier. Cairo tugged on Amara's hand, his young face scrunched with concern. Mama, are you sad? Amara's composure cracked slightly as she knelt to pull both children close. No, baby. Mama's just remembering. Remembering what? Zara asked with the persistence that only children possessed. Old friends. Amara replied diplomatically, but her eyes remained locked on Marcus's face. Sometimes when we see old friends, it brings back lots of feelings. Marcus watched this tender interaction, his heart breaking and healing simultaneously. These were his children, flesh of his flesh, blood of his blood, and he was a stranger to them. Worse than a stranger. He was the man who'd chosen a conference room over a family, profit margins over love, ambition over the most precious gifts life could offer. We should go, Amara said, rising and gathering her purse. It's getting late, and the children have homework. Desperation clawed at Marcus's chest. He couldn't let them walk away again. 7 years ago, he'd watched Amara leave their apartment with tears streaming down her face, and he'd convinced himself it was for the best. He'd told himself that love could wait, that success came first, that there would be time for family later. He'd been catastrophically wrong. Amara, please. Marcus reached out instinctively, his fingers brushing hers across the small table. The contact sent electricity shooting up his arm, the same spark that had ignited between them the first night they met. I know I don't deserve a second chance, but they do. They deserve to know, don't. Her voice carried a warning sharp enough to cut glass. Don't make this about what they deserve when you're the one who chose to walk away. The accusation hit its target with devastating accuracy. But Marcus had learned something about fighting for what mattered in the 7 years since he'd lost her. His business success had come from persistence, from refusing to accept defeat even when the odds seemed impossible. You're right, he said simply, surprising her with his directness. I walked away. I was a coward who thought love could wait while I built an empire. But I'm not walking away now, Amara. Not this time. Something shifted in her expression, surprise, perhaps, or the faintest flicker of hope trying to break through years of carefully constructed walls. Mama, Cairo spoke up, his small hand finding hers. The nice man seems really sad. Maybe we could be his friend? Out of the mouths of babes. Marcus felt his throat close with emotion as he looked down at his son, this beautiful, empathetic boy who'd inherited the best of both his parents. What do you think, Zara? Amara asked gently. Should we be friends with Marcus? Zara studied Marcus with the serious consideration that children brought to important decisions. "He has kind eyes," she announced finally. "And he helped me with my chair. Mama says helping people is important." "Your mama is absolutely right," Marcus replied, his voice thick with emotion. Amara closed her eyes briefly, and Marcus could see her internal war playing out across her beautiful features. When she opened them again, resignation and something deeper had replaced the anger. "We'll see," she said diplomatically. "But now we really need to go." Marcus pulled out his business card, then hesitated. The gold-embossed paper with his corporate title felt wrong somehow. Too formal, too much about the man he'd been rather than the man he desperately wanted to become. Instead, he grabbed a napkin and wrote his personal number in careful script. "This is my private line," he said, pressing it into her palm. "Day or night, Amara. Whatever you need, whatever they need. I mean that." She took the napkin without looking at it, but Marcus noticed she didn't throw it away. That small gesture felt like the first victory he'd had in 7 years. As they prepared to leave, Zara suddenly turned back to him with the solemnity that only children could possess. "Will you remember us?" she asked, her amber eyes, so much like his own, searching his face for truth. Marcus knelt to her level, his heart hammering against his ribs like a caged bird desperate for freedom. "I will remember you every single day for the rest of my life," he promised. "Both of you. Promise?" Cairo added, joining his sister. "I promise," Marcus repeated, looking between his children and their mother. "That's a promise I'll never break." After they left, Marcus remained at the table for nearly an hour, staring at the door through which his heart had just walked away again. But this time felt different. This time, he wouldn't let fear and pride cost him everything that mattered. His phone buzzed insistently with messages from Rebecca, from the Singapore investors, from board members wondering where their CEO had disappeared to. Marcus ignored them all. For the first time in 7 years, Ashford Tech would have to wait. He had more important things to do. 7 years earlier, the rain pelted against the floor-to-ceiling windows of their shared apartment, creating rivulets that caught the glow of the city lights 20 floors below. Marcus stood silhouetted against the glass, his phone pressed to his ear as he spoke in the clipped, urgent tones that had become second nature during the months of negotiations. "No, Chin, the Shanghai numbers don't work," he said, pacing with the restless energy that had driven him to build something from nothing. "If we're going to expand into the Asian markets, we need local partnerships, not foreign investments that tie our hands." Behind him, Amara sat curled on their cream-colored sofa, a sketchpad balanced on her knees as she worked on designs for her freelance marketing business. But her usual focused concentration was absent tonight. She kept glancing at the clock, at Marcus, at the small white stick hidden in her purse that had changed everything. 2 pink lines. 2 little pink lines that meant their carefully planned future had just taken an unexpected turn. "Marcus?" She called softly when he paused between calls. "Hold on, baby," he replied without turning around, already dialing another number. "Kenji, it's Marcus. We need to talk about the Tokyo timeline." Amara bit her lip and returned to her sketching, but the elegant lines that usually flowed from her pencil felt forced tonight. "How did you tell the man you love that you were pregnant when he was in the middle of the biggest deal of his career? How did you explain that their 2-year plan had just become a 9-month countdown?" Marcus had been working 18-hour days for 3 months, ever since the possibility of international expansion had emerged. She understood his drive, had fallen in love with his ambition as much as his brilliant mind, and the way he made her laugh until her sides ached. But lately, it felt like she was sharing him with a demanding mistress named Success. "The Singapore meeting is crucial," Marcus was saying, his reflection ghost-like in the rain-streaked window. "If we can close the distribution deal, we'll have access to markets we've only dreamed about." Amara's hand drifted unconsciously to her flat stomach. "We'll have something more important than markets soon," she thought. "We'll have a family." The irony wasn't lost on her that she was sitting in their apartment, the one they'd chosen specifically for its extra bedroom that Marcus had joked would make a perfect nursery someday, holding the proof that someday had arrived ahead of schedule. Marcus finally ended his call and turned toward her, his face alight with the excitement that always accompanied his biggest deals. "Amara, this is it. This is what we've been working toward. The Singapore investors want to meet next week, and if everything goes according to plan." He stopped mid-sentence, finally noticing her expression. "Hey, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." Amara set down her sketchpad and took a deep breath. Marcus, we need to talk. Something in her tone made him pocket his phone and join her on the sofa, his businessman's instincts telling him this was important. What's going on? You've been quiet all evening. I know you're focused on the Singapore deal, she began carefully, and I know how important this expansion is for your company, our company. Marcus interrupted gently, taking her hands in his. Everything I'm building for us, Amara. For our future. That's just it, she said, her voice catching slightly. Our future just got a little more immediate. Marcus frowned, not understanding. What do you mean? Amara reached into her purse and pulled out the pregnancy test, placing it carefully on the coffee table between them. For a moment, Marcus simply stared at it, his mind processing what he was seeing. Is that positive? Amara whispered. I'm pregnant, Marcus. We're going to have a baby. The silence that followed felt like an eternity. Marcus stared at the test as if it might change if he looked at it long enough, his face cycling through expressions too quick for Amara to read. Pregnant, he repeated finally, the words sounding foreign in his mouth. I know the timing isn't ideal, Amara rushed to explain, misreading his shock as disappointment. With the Singapore deal and everything you have going on, but Marcus, I'm so happy. Scared, but happy. We've talked about having children, and I know this is sooner than we planned, but the timing is terrible, Marcus said quietly, and Amara felt her heart begin to sink. It's not that terrible, she said, trying to keep her voice light. Babies don't arrive for 9 months. You'll have time to finish the expansion, to get everything settled. Amara, you don't understand. Marcus stood abruptly, running his hands through his hair in the gesture she knew meant he was overwhelmed. The Singapore deal isn't just about expansion. It's about survival. If we don't secure these partnerships, if we don't get this international presence established, we could lose everything. We'll figure it out, Amara said, rising to face him. We always do. Marcus, this is our child. Our baby. I know what it is, Marcus snapped, then immediately looked stricken. I'm sorry. I didn't mean. It's just the timing, Amara. This changes everything. It doesn't have to change everything, she pleaded. You can still travel, still build your empire. I can handle things here for 9 months? And then what? A newborn doesn't exactly fit into the lifestyle we're building. The words hit Amara like physical blows. The lifestyle we're building? Marcus, I thought we were building a life together. A family. We are, Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. Just not yet. We agreed to wait until the company was stable, until we had the financial security to provide properly for children. We have financial security, Amara pointed out. Your startup is already profitable, and my marketing business is growing. It's not enough, Marcus interrupted. Not for what I want to give our children. Not for the kind of future I'm trying to build for us. What if I don't need the kind of future you're trying to build? Amara asked quietly. What if I just need you? Marcus looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since she'd shown him the test. She was still the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen, still the person whose laugh could make his worst day better, still the woman he'd fallen in love with at first sight. But now she looked vulnerable in a way that terrified him. He wasn't ready for this responsibility. Wasn't ready to be the man she needed him to be. I can't do this right now, Amara, he said finally. The Singapore meeting is next week. This deal could set us up for life, could give us everything we've ever wanted. I thought we already had everything we wanted, Amara whispered. Marcus's phone rang, cutting through the moment like a blade. He glanced at it, then at Amara. It's the Singapore investors. I have to take this. Marcus, please, this will just take a minute, he said, already answering the call. Mr. Tanaka, thank you for calling back. Amara watched him walk away, returning to his position by the window as he slipped back into business mode. The pregnancy test still sat on the coffee table like evidence of a crime, and she suddenly felt very alone in the apartment they'd shared for 2 years. She was still sitting there when Marcus finished his call 30 minutes later. They want to move up the meeting, he announced, his excitement returning. If I can get to Singapore by Thursday, we can close the deal before their fiscal year ends. This is exactly the break we needed. We? Amara asked pointedly. Marcus had the grace to look uncomfortable. Amara, this is important. This deal could change everything for us. And the baby? Is the baby important? Of course it is, Marcus said, but he couldn't quite meet her eyes. It's just, the timing is complicated. Life is complicated, Marcus. That's what makes it beautiful. Marcus sat beside her again, taking her hands in his. Look, maybe this is actually a blessing in disguise. Maybe the universe is telling us to slow down, to make sure we're really ready before we bring a child into our lives. Amara felt ice forming in her veins. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe we should consider our options. We're young, we have time. Maybe it's better to wait until we're truly prepared. No. The word came out sharper than Amara intended. No, Marcus. This isn't a business decision you can optimize for better outcomes. This is our child. I'm not saying we terminate, Marcus said quickly. I'm just saying maybe we should think about whether this is really the right time. There's never a right time, Amara interrupted, pulling her hands free. There's only love and commitment and the willingness to figure it out as you go. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, staring at the pregnancy test as if it held answers to questions he didn't know how to ask. I need to go to Singapore, he said finally. I know. This deal. It's everything I've worked for. I know that too. When I get back, we'll talk about this properly. We'll figure out what to do. Amara looked at the man she loved, the brilliant, driven, ambitious man who'd swept her off her feet with his vision of the future, and realized that their visions might not be as aligned as she'd thought. What if I don't want to figure out what to do? She asked quietly. What if I want to have this baby regardless of the timing or the deals or the complications? Marcus met her eyes finally, and what she saw there broke her heart. Fear. Resentment. The look of a man who felt trapped by circumstances beyond his control. Then I guess we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, he said. It wasn't the answer she'd hoped for, but it was the answer that told her everything she needed to know about where she stood in Marcus's list of priorities. That night, as Marcus packed for Singapore, Amara lay in their bed listening to him move around the apartment with purposeful efficiency. When he finally slipped under the covers beside her, she pretended to be asleep. I love you, he whispered into the darkness, his voice heavy with guilt and confusion. Amara didn't answer. Love, she was learning, wasn't always enough. Marcus left for Singapore the next morning with a kiss that felt like goodbye and a promise to call that rang hollow before he was even out the door. 3 days later, Amara discovered she wasn't just pregnant, she was carrying twins. She called Marcus to share the news, but his assistant said he was in meetings. She called again the next day, and the day after that, each time getting the same polite brush off. By the time Marcus returned from Singapore 2 weeks later, successful deal in hand and plans for immediate expansion to 3 more countries, Amara had made her decision. The divorce papers were waiting on his desk. 7 years ago, 2 weeks after Singapore, Marcus Ashford stood in the doorway of what had been their shared apartment, staring at the manila envelope that sat on his mahogany desk like a ticking bomb. The Singapore deal documents were scattered around it, contracts worth $50 million that should have felt like victory. Instead, they felt like evidence of the biggest mistake of his life. Divorce papers. His hands trembled as he opened the envelope, Amara's elegant handwriting on the accompanying note making his chest tighten with a pain so sharp it nearly brought him to his knees. Marcus, I called 17 times while you were away. Your assistant said you were too busy to speak with me. I understand now where I stand in your list of priorities. The twins are healthy. Yes, twins. The doctor says they're developing perfectly, due in 6 months. I thought you'd want to know, but since you've made it clear that the timing is terrible and this pregnancy is a complication, I've decided to make it simple for you. I'm releasing you from any obligation to us. Sign the papers, transfer whatever money you think is appropriate to the account I've listed, and you can go back to building your empire without the burden of an unwanted family. Don't contact me unless it's through lawyers. The twins and I will be fine without you. We have to be. Amara, P.S. I've moved out. The apartment is yours. The nursery we planned together felt too painful to look at every day. Marcus read the letter 3 times before the words fully sank in. Twins. She was carrying twins, and she'd tried to tell him while he was closing the deal he'd thought was more important than anything else in the world. He'd been wrong. Catastrophically, devastatingly wrong. His phone rang, probably another investor or potential partner wanting to capitalize on the Singapore success, but Marcus ignored it. He ignored the next call too, and the one after that. For the first time in his adult life, business didn't matter. He tried calling Amara, but her phone went straight to voicemail. He drove to her sister's apartment, but Keisha met him at the door with eyes full of righteous fury and a protective stance that told him everything he needed to know. She doesn't want to see you, Keisha said flatly. She's been crying for 2 weeks straight, Marcus. 2 weeks of wondering why the man she loves couldn't even take her phone calls. I was trying to secure our future. You secured a future, Keisha interrupted. Just not the one that included her. Marcus spent the next 3 months trying to reach Amara. He hired investigators to find her new address, but she'd covered her tracks well. He sent flowers to her office, but they were returned unopened. He wrote letters that were never answered. Finally, his lawyer called with news that changed everything. She's not asking for alimony, Richard Blackstone said, his voice carefully neutral. No spousal support, no division of assets. She just wants a clean break and child support to be deposited into a trust fund for the children. She's also requesting that all contact go through legal channels. What does that mean? Marcus asked, though he feared he already knew. It means she doesn't want to see you, Marcus. She's giving you exactly what you seem to want, freedom from complications. The divorce was finalized on a cold February morning. Marcus signed the papers in his lawyer's office, his hands steady despite the way his world was crumbling around him. That same day, he received a birth announcement that nearly broke him completely. Cairo Michael Williams and Zara Grace Williams. Born February 14, 2018. 6 pounds 2 ounces and 5 pounds 14 ounces. Mother and babies healthy and home. Valentine's Day babies. The irony would have been funny if it hadn't been so heartbreaking. Marcus stared at the hospital photo, 2 tiny, perfect faces swaddled in pink and blue blankets, and saw his own eyes looking back at him. His children. His twins. And he was nothing more than a name on their birth certificates and a bank account number for their mother. That night, alone in the apartment that had once been filled with love and laughter, Marcus made a decision that would define the next 7 years of his life. If Amara wanted him to stay away, he would honor that wish. If she believed they were better off without him, maybe she was right. Maybe the best thing he could do for his children was to provide for them financially while staying out of their lives emotionally. So he threw himself into work with a fervor that bordered on obsession. Ashford Tech expanded globally, acquiring companies, developing revolutionary software, and making Marcus one of the youngest billionaires in technology. Every success felt hollow, but he kept going because work was the only thing that numbed the constant ache in his chest. He set up a generous trust fund for the twins, enough to pay for the best schools, the finest colleges, whatever opportunities they might want. He made sure Amara never had to worry about money for them. But he never tried to contact her again, never attempted to see the children he'd helped create. He dated occasionally brilliant, beautiful women who moved in his circles and understood the demands of his lifestyle. But no one made him laugh the way Amara had. No one challenged him intellectually while simultaneously making him want to be a better man. No one felt like home. 5 years passed. Then 6. Marcus built a fortune worth billions, employed thousands of people, and was featured on magazine covers as one of the most eligible bachelors in America. But he went to bed every night in an empty penthouse, wondering what his children looked like now, whether they were happy, if they ever asked about their father. He started seeing a therapist, Dr. Sarah Chin, a wise woman who specialized in helping driven executives find balance. During their sessions, Marcus finally began to understand the depth of his mistakes. "You were afraid," Dr. Chin observed during one particularly intense session. "Afraid of failure, afraid of not being enough, afraid of repeating your own father's mistakes." Marcus's father had been a workaholic who'd missed most of Marcus's childhood in pursuit of providing for his family. The man had died of a heart attack at 52, surrounded by his achievements but alone because he'd never learned to prioritize relationships over success. "I became him," Marcus said quietly. "I swore I'd never put work before family, and I did exactly that." "Recognition is the first step toward change," Dr. Chin replied. "The question is, what are you going to do with this awareness?" But what could he do? The twins were now school-aged children who didn't know him. Amara had built a life without him, a successful life, from what his private investigators reported. She'd grown her marketing firm into a respected agency, owned a beautiful home in a family-friendly neighborhood, and had created the stable, loving environment he'd failed to provide. They were better off without him. That's what he told himself every day. Until Tuesday afternoon in a coffee shop changed everything. Present day. Marcus sat in his penthouse office, the lights of Manhattan twinkling 40 stories below, but his mind was somewhere else entirely. The coffee shop encounter played on repeat in his thoughts, every word, every expression, every heartbreaking moment of recognition in his children's amber eyes. His phone buzzed with yet another urgent message from his assistant, but Marcus ignored it. For the first time in 7 years, Ashford Tech could wait. He had more important things to think about. The napkin with his phone number sat on Amara's kitchen counter, he imagined. Would she throw it away? Would she call? Would she give him the chance he didn't deserve but desperately needed? Hours passed. Marcus ordered dinner from his favorite restaurant, but couldn't taste a bite. He tried to read reports, tried to focus on the merger that would expand Ashford Tech into South America, but the numbers blurred together meaninglessly. At 11:47 p.m., his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Saturday, 2 p.m., Central Park Playground near 72nd Street. Don't disappoint them again. Marcus stared at the message until his eyes watered, reading it over and over to make sure he wasn't dreaming. She was giving him a chance. After 7 years of silence, after the way he'd failed her, Amara was giving him an opportunity to meet his children properly. He typed back immediately, "I'll be there. Thank you for giving me a chance I don't deserve." The response came an hour later. "You're right. You don't deserve it. But they do. And maybe we all deserve a chance to heal." Marcus read those words, "We all deserve a chance to heal," and felt something he hadn't experienced in 7 years. Hope. The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation that would have impressed his most demanding investors. Marcus approached Saturday the way he approached every crucial negotiation, with meticulous planning and attention to every detail. He researched child development extensively, reading articles about 6-year-old interests, appropriate conversation topics, and how to build trust with children who didn't know you. He consulted with child psychologists, bought books on parenting, and even practiced conversations in front of his mirror. Rebecca, he called his assistant on Friday morning, cancel everything for the weekend. Actually, clear my calendar for the next 2 weeks. Sir. Rebecca's voice carried barely concealed shock. Marcus Ashford didn't take vacations, barely took lunch breaks. Are you feeling all right? I'm feeling something I haven't felt in years, Marcus replied, surprising himself with his honesty. I'm feeling like a father. On Friday evening, Marcus drove to FAO Schwartz, the famous toy store that had enchanted children for generations. He walked through the aisles with wonder, seeing everything through the eyes of 2 6-year-olds he barely knew but loved desperately. For Cairo, who loved building things, he selected a sophisticated robotics kit designed for young engineers. For Zara, the artist, he found a deluxe art set with every color of paint and pencil imaginable. Then, second-guessing himself, he bought backup gifts, simpler toys, books, puzzles, anything that might spark joy in children whose preferences he could only guess at. Saturday morning arrived with unseasonably warm weather and clear skies, as if the universe was conspiring to make this reunion perfect. Marcus dressed carefully, jeans and a casual button-down shirt, expensive but not ostentatiously so. He wanted to look approachable, like someone who could be a friend to 2 young children. He arrived at Central Park 30 minutes early, claiming a bench with a clear view of the playground. His heart hammered against his ribs as he watched families enjoying the weekend. Fathers pushing children on swings, mothers helping toddlers navigate climbing structures, siblings racing across the grass with pure joy. This could have been his life. Should have been his life. At exactly 2 p.m., he saw them approaching from the path that led from the subway station. Amara walked between the twins, her hands holding theirs, her posture protective but not defensive. She dressed simply too, jeans and a flowing top that made her look like the young woman he'd fallen in love with all those years ago. Cairo spotted him first, pointing excitedly. There's the nice man from the coffee shop. Zara waved enthusiastically, her reserved nature apparently overcome by 6-year-old excitement at seeing a familiar face. Marcus stood as they approached, his mouth dry with nervousness. Hello, he said, his voice rougher than intended. Hi, Marcus, Amara replied, her tone carefully neutral but not hostile. The children have been talking about you all week. Really? Marcus knelt to their level, his heart swelling at their eager faces. What have you been saying? I told my friend Tommy that we met a man who looks just like us, Cairo announced. He said that was weird, but I said it was cool. It is cool, Marcus agreed solemnly. Very cool. I drew you a picture, Zara said shyly, pulling a folded piece of paper from her pocket. Mama said you might like it. Marcus accepted the drawing with hands that trembled slightly. Unfolding it revealed a crayon masterpiece, a tall figure in a dark suit standing next to 2 smaller figures, all with carefully drawn amber eyes. Above them, Zara had written "The Nice Man" in purple crayon. "This is beautiful," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "This is the most beautiful picture anyone has ever given me." "Really?" Zara beamed. "Mama says I'm a good artist." "Your mama is absolutely right," Marcus replied, looking up at Amara. "You're both incredibly talented. Want to see me on the monkey bars?" Cairo asked, already tugging toward the playground equipment. "I would love to see that," Marcus said, standing and following the children toward the playground. For the next hour, Marcus experienced something he'd never thought possible, being a father. He pushed Zara on the swings, marveling at her laughter. He spotted Cairo on the climbing structure, cheering his accomplishments. He helped them navigate the elaborate playground equipment, answered their endless questions about everything from his height to his car to whether he had pets. "Do you live alone?" Zara asked as they sat on a bench sharing the snacks Amara had brought. "I do," Marcus replied honestly. "That must be lonely," Cairo observed with the startling insight that children sometimes possessed. "It is," Marcus admitted, glancing at Amara, who was listening carefully to every exchange. "But meeting you two has made me very happy." "Mama says lonely people need friends," Zara said seriously. "Do you have friends?" The question was more complicated than a 6-year-old could understand. Marcus had colleagues, business associates, people who wanted things from him. But friends? Real friends who cared about him as a person rather than as a business opportunity? "Not very many," he said honestly. "I've been too busy working to make good friends." "That's sad," Zara declared. "Everyone needs friends." "You're absolutely right," Marcus agreed. "What about you two? Do you have lots of friends?" This launched an enthusiastic discussion about school friends, neighborhood kids, and the complicated social dynamics of 6-year-old relationships. Marcus listened with fascination, storing away every detail about his children's lives. "Tommy's dad takes him fishing," Cairo mentioned at one point. "I wish I could go fishing." Marcus's heart clenched. "Maybe someday," he said carefully, glancing at Amara for permission he wasn't sure he had the right to ask for. "That would be awesome." Cairo exclaimed, "Mama, can Marcus take me fishing?" Amara's expression tightened slightly. "We'll see, baby. That would be a big adventure." "I know how to swim," Cairo said proudly. "Mama made sure we both learned when we were little." "Swimming is very important," Marcus agreed. "Safety first." "Are you a good swimmer?" Zara asked. "I am," Marcus replied. "I was on my college swim team." "College is for big kids," Cairo said knowledgeably. "Mama went to college." "She has a picture of her in a funny hat." "A graduation cap," Amara clarified, smiling despite herself. "And it wasn't that funny." "It was a little funny," Zara giggled. Marcus watched this family banter with a mixture of joy and heartbreak. They were so easy together, so comfortable in their shared jokes and memories. He was the outsider looking in, grateful for even this small glimpse into their world. As the afternoon wore on, Marcus found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't in years. The twins' natural curiosity and acceptance made conversation flow easily. They asked him about his work. "Do you really boss around computers?" His hobbies. "Why don't you have any?" And his family. "Just us," he said, looking at all three of them with meaning that made Amara's breath catch. "I brought something for you," Marcus said finally, retrieving the carefully wrapped packages from his car. "Presents," both children exclaimed, their excitement infectious. "You didn't have to do that," Amara said quietly, but Marcus noticed she didn't stop the children from accepting the gifts. Cairo tore into his package with typical 6-year-old enthusiasm, gasping when he saw the robotics kit. "This is so cool. Look, Mama, it has real motors and everything." Zara was more careful with her wrapping, treating the process like a ceremony. When she revealed the art set, her eyes went wide with wonder. "There are so many colors," she breathed. "I can paint anything." "Thank you," they said in unison, and Marcus felt his chest expand with a happiness so pure it was almost painful. "You're very welcome," he replied. "I hope you'll think of me when you build amazing robots and create beautiful art." "Can you help me build something?" Cairo asked eagerly. "This looks complicated." Marcus looked to Amara, silently asking permission. She hesitated for a moment, then nodded slightly. "I would love to help," Marcus said. "But we'll need a good workspace and plenty of time. Our house has a big table," Zara offered helpfully. "And Mama makes the best hot chocolate." The casual invitation hung in the air like a bridge Marcus wasn't sure he was allowed to cross. He looked at Amara, seeing the internal struggle playing out across her features. "Maybe," she said finally. We'll see. But as they gathered their things to leave, Cairo tugged on Marcus's sleeve. Will we see you again soon? He asked with the directness that only children possessed. Marcus knelt to their level one more time, his heart full to bursting. I hope so, he said honestly. I really, really hope so. Me too, Zara said, surprising everyone by hugging him spontaneously. Cairo followed suit, and Marcus found himself embracing his children for the first time in their lives. The moment was brief but profound, imprinting itself on his memory with crystalline clarity. As they walked back toward the subway station, Marcus fell into step beside Amara while the twins ran ahead, their energy seemingly inexhaustible. They're incredible, he said quietly. Amara, what you've done, raising them alone, making them feel so loved and secure. I'm in awe of you. Amara's steps slowed slightly. It wasn't easy, she admitted, especially those first few years. There were nights when I felt so overwhelmed, so alone. I should have been there, Marcus said, his voice heavy with regret. I should have fought harder for us, for them. You made your choice, Amara replied, but her tone held more sadness than anger now. I made the wrong choice, Marcus said firmly. The worst choice of my life. But if you'll let me, I want to make better choices now. They walked in silence for a few moments, watching their children chase each other in circles, their laughter carrying on the warm afternoon breeze. They like you, Amara observed finally. I like them too, Marcus replied. More than I thought possible. Amara, I know I don't have the right to ask for anything from you, but please, let me be part of their lives. Let me try to be the father they deserve. Amara stopped walking, turning to face him fully. Her eyes searched his face, looking for something, sincerity, perhaps, or the absence of the selfish ambition that had driven him away 7 years ago. It's not just about what you want, Marcus, she said quietly. It's about what's best for them. They've never been disappointed by a father because they've never expected anything from one. If you start this journey with them, you can't change your mind when it gets difficult or inconvenient. I won't, Marcus promised. I swear to you, Amara, I'm not the same man who walked away 7 years ago. Business will never come before family again. Nothing will. We'll see, Amara said. But Marcus caught something in her expression that looked like hope fighting to break through carefully constructed walls. As they reached the subway entrance, the twins turned back to wave goodbye. Bye, Marcus, they called in unison. Thank you for the presents. Thank you for a perfect afternoon, Marcus called back, meaning every word. After they disappeared down the subway steps, Marcus stood on the street corner for a long time, replaying every moment of the last few hours. For the first time in 7 years, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. His phone buzzed with work emails, but Marcus ignored them. He had more important things to think about now. He had children to win over, trust to rebuild, and a woman to prove himself to. The hardest negotiation of his life was just beginning, but this time the stakes weren't measured in dollars or market share. This time, he was fighting for his family. And Marcus Ashford had never lost a fight that truly mattered to him. 3 weeks after the park, the morning sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Marcus's penthouse as he carefully packed a cooler with sandwiches, fruit, and juice boxes, items that had never existed in his pristine kitchen before this week. His housekeeper, Maria, watched with barely concealed amazement as her usually all-business employer fretted over whether peanut butter and jelly was too simple for a picnic lunch. Mr. Ashford, she said gently in her accented English, children love simple food. Trust me, I have 6 grandchildren. Marcus smiled gratefully. Thank you, Maria. I'm still learning. Learning was an understatement. In the 3 weeks since their afternoon in Central Park, Marcus had been cramming like a student preparing for the most important exam of his life. He'd read every parenting book on Amazon, watched YouTube videos about father-child bonding, and even taken a weekend course on child development. The investment was paying off. Saturday afternoon visits had become a cherished routine. Marcus would meet Amara and the twins at various locations around the city, playgrounds, museums, the zoo, ice cream shops, and spend hours learning who his children were beyond the surface details. Cairo, he'd discovered, had inherited Marcus's analytical mind, but paired it with Amara's creativity. The boy could spend hours building elaborate structures with blocks or Legos, narrating the engineering principles behind each design. Last Saturday, he built a bridge that could hold 20 toy cars while explaining load distribution with the seriousness of a graduate student. Zara was pure artist soul-wrapped in 6-year-old wonder. She saw beauty in everything, the way sunlight hit puddles, the patterns clouds made in the sky, the colors that emerge when different paints mix together. She'd started bringing Marcus drawings every week, each one more detailed and imaginative than the last. Both children had begun asking when they'd see him again before their current visit was even over. The tentative curiosity of those first meetings had evolved into genuine affection, and Marcus treasured every Marcus. Look at this. And can you help me with that? But it was Amara who remained the enigma. She was polite during their outings, even warm at times when the children did something particularly endearing. She smiled when Marcus clearly struggled with some aspect of parenting, offered gentle guidance when he looked lost, and never made him feel inadequate despite his obvious inexperience. Yet she maintained careful emotional distance, never staying alone with him for more than a few minutes, never allowing conversations to venture into personal territory. She was present but protected, engaged but guarded. Marcus understood her caution. He'd shattered her trust once before at the worst possible moment. Rebuilding it would take more than weekend visits and expensive toys. It would take consistency, patience, and proof that he'd truly changed. Today's plan was ambitious, a full day at the Children's Museum of Science and Technology, followed by lunch at their favorite pizza place, and then an afternoon at his penthouse where Cairo could finally see the robotics kit they'd been discussing in action. It would be the first time Amara and the children visited his home, the first glimpse into the life he'd built while they were building theirs without him. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Amara, running 10 minutes late. Cairo insisted on bringing his latest robot to show you. Marcus smiled, typing back, "Take your time. I'm looking forward to meeting the new creation." "He's very proud of it," came her response. "You've inspired quite the engineering passion." The simple statement made Marcus's chest warm with pride. He was having an impact on his son's life, encouraging interests and dreams in a way his own father never had. 20 minutes later, the elevator opened to reveal his family, and yes, Marcus had started thinking of them that way, despite having no official claim to the title. Cairo practically bounced with excitement, clutching a small robot he'd clearly built himself. "Marcus, look what I made." Cairo thrust the creation forward proudly. "It can walk and turn its head and everything." Marcus knelt to examine the robot with the seriousness it deserved. The construction was impressive for a 6-year-old, clearly influenced by the kit Marcus had given him but personalized with Cairo's own innovations. "This is incredible engineering," Marcus said honestly. "Can you show me how the head mechanism works?" As Cairo launched into an enthusiastic explanation of gears and motors, Marcus caught Amara watching them with an expression he couldn't quite read. There was pride there, and something that might have been longing, but also a wariness that suggested she was still waiting for him to disappoint them. "Hi, Marcus." Zara interrupted her brother's technical lecture with a hug that had become their standard greeting. "I brought you something too." She handed him a carefully folded paper that, when opened, revealed a watercolor painting of a tall building with windows that seemed to stretch to the sky. "It's your house," she explained proudly. "Mama said you live way up high, so I painted it touching the clouds." "It's perfect," Marcus said, meaning it completely. "Would you like to see if you got the inside right too?" Both children's eyes widened with excitement. They'd been asking to see where Marcus lived for weeks, and Amara had finally agreed to today's visit. "Really?" Cairo asked. "We can see your whole house." "Every room," Marcus confirmed, standing to address Amara. "If that's still okay with your mom." "Can we, Mama?" Both children pleaded in unison. Amara smiled at their enthusiasm. "Yes, but remember our rules about other people's homes. Use indoor voices, don't touch things without asking, and always say please and thank you," they recited in practiced unison. Marcus led them to his private elevator, noting how Amara's hand instinctively found the children's shoulders as they rode to the top floor. When the doors opened directly into his penthouse, both twins gasped in amazement. "Whoa," Cairo breathed, taking in the soaring ceilings, the wall of windows overlooking Central Park, and the sleek modern furniture. "It's like something from a movie." "It's so big," Zara added, her artistic eye drawn to the carefully curated artwork and the way natural light flooded every space. Marcus watched them explore with wonder, but his attention kept returning to Amara. She stood in his living room looking both impressed and overwhelmed, her eyes taking in the obvious expense of everything around them. "It's beautiful," she said quietly when she noticed him watching. "Very. You. Is it?" Marcus asked, genuinely curious. "I'm not sure I even know what me is anymore." Something flickered in her expression, surprise, perhaps, at his honesty. "Can we see your room?" Zara asked, interrupting the moment. "Of course," Marcus replied, leading them through the penthouse. The tour revealed a space that, despite its luxury, felt oddly empty. The rooms were perfectly designed but impersonal, like a high-end hotel rather than a home. There were no family photos, no personal mementos, nothing that spoke of relationships or memories or life beyond work. "Where are all your pictures?" Cairo asked with typical 6-year-old directness as they stood in Marcus's bedroom. "I don't have many," Marcus admitted. "Everyone has pictures," Zara insisted. "We have lots at our house. Pictures of us growing up and Mama's family and friends." Marcus felt the familiar pang of everything he'd missed, but also something new, a determination to create new memories, new photos, new evidence of the life he wanted to build. "Maybe you could help me fix that," he suggested carefully. "If we took some pictures today, I could start a proper photo collection." "Yes," both children exclaimed, and even Amara smiled at their enthusiasm. They spent the morning exploring the penthouse, with Marcus explaining how various technologies worked and Cairo asking increasingly sophisticated questions about the smart home systems. Zara was fascinated by the automated art lighting and the way different settings created different moods in each room. This would be perfect for painting, she announced in his study, where north-facing windows provided ideal natural light. "The light is just right. Would you like to paint here sometime?" Marcus asked, the question slipping out before he could stop himself. Zara's face lit up, but she looked to her mother for permission. Amara's expression was carefully neutral, but Marcus caught the slight hesitation that suggested they were venturing into territory she wasn't ready for. "We'll see," Amara said diplomatically. The same phrase Marcus was learning meant, "Probably not, but I don't want to disappoint the children right now." Lunch was a revelation in itself. Marcus had ordered pizza from the children's favorite place, and they ate sitting on his living room floor like a real family having a casual meal. Cairo demonstrated his robot for what felt like the 100th time, while Zara critiqued the color choices in his abstract paintings with the seriousness of a museum curator. "This blue makes me feel peaceful," she declared, pointing to a piece Marcus had bought because his decorator said it would complement the room's color scheme. "But this red one makes me feel like running. What do you think about when you paint?" Marcus asked, genuinely curious about his daughter's artistic process. "Everything," Zara replied promptly. "Like how the grass smells after it rains, or how Cairo's laugh sounds when he's really happy, or how Mama hums when she's cooking dinner." Marcus glanced at Amara, wondering if she realized how deeply their daughter observed and internalized the emotional textures of their family life. The thought that he'd missed 6 years of these insights made his chest ache with regret. After lunch, Marcus set up the advanced robotics kit in his study, and both children dove in with enthusiasm. What followed was 2 hours of the most natural father-child bonding Marcus had ever experienced. He guided them through the initial construction while they peppered him with questions about engineering, programming, and how robots were used in real life. "At my company, we use robots to help build computer components," Marcus explained as Cairo carefully attached a servo motor to their creation. "They're much more precise than human hands for really tiny work." "Do you build the robots?" Zara asked. "I help design the programs that tell them what to do," Marcus replied. "It's like writing instructions for a very literal friend who needs everything explained perfectly." "That's what Mama says about teaching us chores," Cairo giggled. "Very literal friends who need everything explained." Marcus caught Amara's amused expression and felt a warmth that had nothing to do with shared parenting humor and everything to do with feeling like he belonged in this family dynamic. As the afternoon wore on, Marcus noticed Amara relaxing incrementally. She stopped hovering protectively near the children and settled into an armchair with a book, occasionally looking up to smile at their excited discoveries or laugh at their sibling banter. This felt right. Natural. Like a family spending a lazy Sunday afternoon together. The spell was broken by Marcus's phone ringing with the urgent tone he'd assigned to emergency work calls. "I'm sorry," he said, glancing at the screen to see his CFO's name. "I need to take this. It should just be a minute." "Marcus, thank God," came James Morrison's voice, tense with crisis. "We have a situation with the Tokyo servers. The entire Asia-Pacific network is down, and we're looking at millions in lost revenue every hour this continues." Marcus felt the familiar pull of business crisis, the adrenaline surge that had once made him feel most alive. But as he looked at his children happily building robots and Amara watching him with careful eyes, the choice was surprisingly easy. "Call Richardson in London," Marcus said firmly. "He's authorized to make emergency decisions for the Asia-Pacific division. Have him coordinate with the Tokyo team to bring up the backup systems." "But Marcus, this requires your direct—" "James," Marcus interrupted gently, "I'm with my family. Richardson is perfectly capable of handling this situation. If there's something only I can decide, it can wait until tomorrow." The silence on the other end was deafening. In 7 years, Marcus had never refused to personally handle a crisis, regardless of the timing. "Sir, are you sure? This could affect the quarterly numbers." "I'm sure," Marcus said, his eyes meeting Amara's across the room. She was watching him with an expression of surprise and something that might have been respect. "The company will survive one afternoon without me. My family needs me more." After hanging up, Marcus found all three of them staring at him. "Was that important work stuff?" Cairo asked. "It was," Marcus admitted. "But you know what? It wasn't as important as finishing our robot." Zara beamed at him. "Mama always says family comes first." "Your mama is absolutely right," Marcus replied, settling back onto the floor with them. "She usually is." The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of laughter, learning, and the kind of easy togetherness Marcus had dreamed about but never quite believed possible. When their robot finally took its first successful steps across his coffee table, both children cheered as if they'd just watched a moon landing. "We did it," Cairo exclaimed, high-fiving his sister, and then, without hesitation, turning to Marcus for the same celebration. "We sure did, buddy," Marcus replied, his heart full to bursting as his son's small hand met his in victory. As evening approached and they prepared to leave, Zara tugged on Marcus's sleeve. "Can we come back again?" she asked with the hopeful expression that had become utterly irresistible to him. "I hope so," Marcus replied, looking to Amara. "Anytime your mom says it's okay." "Please, Mama," both children pleaded. Amara's expression was softer than Marcus had seen it since their reunion. "We'll see," she said, but this time the phrase carried possibility rather than polite deflection. As they waited for the elevator, Cairo suddenly wrapped his arms around Marcus's waist in an unexpected hug. "I wish you were our dad," he said with the devastating honesty that only children possessed. Marcus felt his world stop. Over the boy's head, he met Amara's eyes and saw his own emotional turmoil reflected there. "Cairo," Amara said gently, "remember what we talked about, but he's really nice." Zara joined in, adding her own hug to her brother's. "And he likes the same things we like. And he has our eyes, and he makes you smile, Mama." The elevator arrived with a soft ding, but none of them moved to enter it. "Kids," Amara said softly, "grown-up relationships are complicated. I would love to be your dad," Marcus said quietly, the words escaping before he could think better of them. "More than anything in the world, I would love that." The silence that followed felt electric with possibility and danger in equal measure. "Maybe we should talk," Amara said finally, her voice carefully controlled but her eyes bright with unshed tears. 1 week later, Marcus was in his home office reviewing contracts when his phone rang with Amara's number. He answered immediately, as he always did when it came to calls involving his family. "Marcus." Amara's voice was tight with stress. "I need your help." "What's wrong?" Marcus was already reaching for his car keys, his protective instincts firing on all cylinders. "I'm at the hospital with Cairo. He fell off the monkey bars at school, and they think his arm might be broken. The x-rays are taking forever. He's scared and in pain. And her voice cracked slightly. "I don't know why I called you. I need it. I'm on my way," Marcus said, already heading for the elevator. "Which hospital?" "Mount Sinai on the Upper East Side," Amara replied. "But Marcus, you don't have to. I'll be there in 15 minutes, Marcus interrupted, his voice brooking no argument. "Where's Zara?" "With my neighbor, Mrs. Chin. She's staying overnight there." "Good. I'm coming, Amara. We'll get through this together." Marcus broke several traffic laws getting to the hospital, his mind racing with worry and something deeper, gratitude that Amara had called him. In her moment of crisis, when she needed someone to lean on, she thought of him. He found them in the pediatric emergency department, Cairo looking small and vulnerable in a hospital gown that was too big for him, his left arm cradled against his chest. Amara sat beside the bed, her usual composure cracked with maternal worry. "Marcus." Cairo's face lit up despite his obvious pain. You came. Of course I came, buddy, Marcus said, moving to the bedside and gently ruffling the boy's hair. How are you feeling? It hurts, Cairo admitted, his voice smaller than usual. But I was being really brave until you got here. Now I can cry a little if I want to, right? The simple trust in those words nearly broke Marcus's heart. You can cry as much as you want, he said softly. Being hurt is scary, and it's okay to be scared. Over Cairo's head, Marcus met Amara's eyes. She looked exhausted and overwhelmed, the single mother who'd been carrying every burden alone for 7 years finally reaching the limits of her strength. Thank you for coming, she whispered. Thank you for calling, Marcus replied, meaning it with every fiber of his being. The next few hours tested every parenting instinct Marcus didn't know he possessed. The X-rays confirmed a clean break in Cairo's radius, painful but not serious, requiring a cast but no surgery. However, the process of setting the bone and applying the cast was traumatic for a 6-year-old who'd never been seriously injured before. Marcus found himself naturally falling into the role of distractor and comforter. He told Cairo stories about famous engineers who'd overcome injuries, made up elaborate tales about robot adventures, and even sang half-remembered lullabies his own mother had used when he was small. When Cairo finally fell asleep, exhausted by pain medication and emotional stress, Marcus and Amara sat in the quiet of the hospital room, watching their son's peaceful breathing. You were amazing with him, Amara said softly. I've never seen him trust someone so completely, so quickly. He's an incredible kid, Marcus replied. They both are. You've done an extraordinary job raising them, Amara. I was so scared, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. When the school called and said there'd been an accident, all I could think was that I couldn't lose him. And then I realized I was facing it alone, like always, and I called you without thinking. Marcus turned to face her fully. I'm glad you did. I want to be the person you call when you're scared. I want to be here for the hard moments, not just the fun Saturday afternoons. Amara studied his face in the dim hospital lighting. Earlier this week, when your work called during our visit, you really meant it, didn't you? When you said family comes first now. Completely, Marcus said without hesitation. I've learned what matters, Amara. Nothing, no deal, no crisis, no amount of money, is worth more than being here for you, and the kids when you need me. 7 years ago, I was an idiot, Marcus interrupted gently. A scared, selfish idiot who thought success was measured in dollars and market share. I know better now. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, both watching Cairo sleep. The boy looked so young in the hospital bed, his new cast bright white against the blue blanket. He asked me yesterday if you were going to be his real dad soon, Amara said suddenly. Marcus's heart stopped. What did you tell him? I told him that relationships are complicated and these things take time, Amara replied. But honestly, I'm not sure how much longer I can keep giving him non-answers. What do you want to tell him? Marcus asked carefully. Amara was quiet for so long that Marcus thought she might not answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. I want to tell him yes, she whispered. God help me, Marcus. I want to tell him that you're going to be his dad and Zara's dad and that we're going to be a real family. But I'm terrified. Marcus felt his chest tighten with hope and desperate love. Terrified of what? Of believing in us again, Amara said, tears finally spilling over. Of letting the kids believe in us. Of what happens if you change your mind again when things get difficult or demanding or inconvenient. Marcus reached for her hands, relieved when she didn't pull away. Amara, look at me. She lifted her tear-stained face to his, and Marcus saw not the successful, composed woman she'd become, but the girl he'd fallen in love with 8 years ago, vulnerable, hopeful, and achingly beautiful. I will never change my mind about you, he said with quiet intensity. About us. About them. What I feel for you isn't convenience or nostalgia or guilt about the past. It's love, Amara. The same love that made me want to marry you 8 years ago, deeper now because of everything we've been through. Marcus, I know you don't trust me yet, he continued. I know I have to earn that. But I need you to know that this isn't a phase or a midlife crisis or some attempt to fix my guilty conscience. This is me fighting for the only thing that's ever really mattered. Amara searched his face, looking for the fear or reservation that had cost them everything before. Instead, she found certainty, determination, and a love so profound it took her breath away. If we do this, she said finally, if we try to be a family. I need to know you're all in. Not just for me, but for them. They can't have their hearts broken by someone they're starting to see as a father figure. I'm all in, Marcus said immediately. Whatever it takes, however long it takes. I'm not going anywhere, Amara. Not ever again. Before she could respond, Cairo stirred in his hospital bed, his eyes opening groggily. Mama? Marcus, he called softly. Are you both still here? We're both here, baby, Amara said, moving to his bedside. How are you feeling? Better, Cairo said, his voice still thick with sleep. My arm doesn't hurt so much now. And I'm not scared anymore because you're both here. Marcus felt something shift in his chest at the simple statement. Both here. As if it was natural for Marcus to be part of the equation, part of the family unit that made Cairo feel safe. That's right, buddy, Marcus said, his voice rough with emotion. We're both here, and we're both going to take care of you. Promise. Cairo asked with the seriousness that only children brought to such questions. Marcus looked at Amara, seeing his own emotions reflected in her eyes. This was the moment, the choice that would define their future. I promise, Marcus said, meaning it with every atom of his being. I promise too, Amara added softly, her hand finding Marcus's and squeezing gently. Cairo smiled sleepily. Good. I like it when we're all together. It feels like a real family. As their son drifted back to sleep, Marcus and Amara sat holding hands in the quiet hospital room, both understanding that something fundamental had shifted between them. They weren't just co-parenting anymore. They weren't just old lovers trying to navigate a complicated situation. They were choosing each other, choosing to be a family, choosing love over fear, hope over past hurt, and the uncertain but beautiful future over the safe but lonely present they'd both been living. It wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, adjustments, and moments when 7 years of separation would rear its head in unexpected ways. But for the first time since that coffee shop encounter, Marcus allowed himself to believe they could make it work. They were going to be a family, a real family. 3 months later, the moving truck rumbled away down the tree-lined street, leaving behind the echo of engines and the quiet satisfaction of a job completed. Marcus stood on the front porch of the house that would now be home, not just his home, but their home, watching Amara direct the children in claiming their new bedrooms. I want the one with the big window, Zara called from somewhere inside the colonial-style house they'd chosen together. You can have it. Cairo replied with the generosity that sibling rivalry hadn't yet corrupted. I want the one near Dad's office so I can help with robot projects. Dad. Marcus still felt a jolt of pure joy every time one of the children used that word. It had started tentatively about 6 weeks ago, after he'd officially begun the legal process of adoption. Now it rolled off their tongues as naturally as breathing, as if he'd always been part of their lives. Marcus, can you help me with this box? Amara called from the kitchen. It's heavier than it looks. Coming. Marcus replied, jogging inside to find her struggling with a container marked China, handle with care. Let me get that, he said, lifting the box easily. Where does it go? Dining room cabinet, Amara directed, then paused to look around the spacious kitchen that would soon be filled with the chaos of family breakfast and homework sessions. I still can't believe this is really happening. Marcus set down the box and moved to wrap his arms around her from behind, marveling at how perfectly she fit against him after all these years. Having second thoughts, he murmured against her ear. Never, Amara replied, leaning back into his embrace. Just grateful. Overwhelmed by how lucky we are to get a second chance at this. They'd taken things slowly after that night in the hospital. Weekly dinners had become twice-weekly visits, which had evolved into Marcus spending entire weekends with them. The children had adapted to his presence in their lives with the remarkable resilience of youth, while he and Amara had carefully rebuilt their relationship on a foundation of honesty, communication, and shared commitment to their family. The proposal had come 2 months ago, not in some grand romantic gesture, but during a quiet evening when they were helping the children with homework. Marcus had looked around their kitchen table, scattered with math worksheets and art projects, all 4 of them working together, and realized he wanted to make it official. Marry me, he'd said suddenly, interrupting Cairo's explanation of long division. Marcus. Amara had laughed, scandalized. In front of the children? Especially in front of the children, Marcus had replied seriously. I want them to know that this is permanent. That we're choosing to be a family, all of us, together. The wedding had been small but perfect, just immediate family and close friends in the garden behind Amara's house, with Cairo and Zara serving as ring bearers and beaming with pride at being part of the ceremony that made their family official. Now, 3 months later, they were merging households and starting fresh in a house that belonged to all of them. "Dad," Cairo's voice echoed through the house. "Come see my new room. I can see the whole backyard from here." "Mama." "Marcus," Zara added her own summons. "My art corner is perfect. The light is just right for painting." Marcus and Amara exchanged amused glances. Even in a house with 6 bedrooms, their children had managed to choose the 2 directly across the hall from each other. "Some things never change," Amara observed fondly. "Some things do," Marcus replied, pulling her closer. "All the important things." They spent the day unpacking, arranging furniture, and turning a house into a home. Marcus marveled at how naturally they fell into domestic rhythms, Amara organizing the kitchen while he assembled furniture, both of them stopping frequently to admire the children's decorating choices or referee minor disagreements about toy placement. By evening, the major pieces were in place, and they ordered pizza to celebrate their first family dinner in their new home. "This is the best house ever," Zara declared around a mouthful of cheese pizza. "And we all picked it together, so it's really ours. Plus, Dad's office is big enough for really complicated robot projects," Cairo added pragmatically. "What do you think, Mama?" Marcus asked, noting how Amara kept looking around the dining room as if she couldn't quite believe they were all there. "I think," Amara said slowly, "that home isn't a place. It's the people you share it with." After dinner, they established their first family tradition in the new house, evening walks around the neighborhood. The children ran ahead, exploring every playground and interesting tree, while Marcus and Amara followed hand in hand. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if we'd never run into each other that day?" Amara asked as they watched their children discover a small pond with ducks. "Every day," Marcus admitted. "I think about how close I came to missing all of this. Missing them growing up, missing you becoming the incredible woman you are now, missing the chance to be the husband and father I should have been from the beginning." "You're the husband and father you're supposed to be now," Amara said firmly. "That's what matters." As they turned toward home, Cairo and Zara each claimed one of Marcus's hands, chattering about their plans for their new bedrooms and the adventures they'd have in their new neighborhood. "This is perfect," Cairo declared with the satisfaction of a child whose world has just gotten significantly better. "Everything's perfect when we're all together," Zara agreed. That night, after the children were settled in their new rooms and the house had fallen into peaceful quiet, Marcus and Amara sat on their back porch swing, watching stars appear in the darkening sky. "Tell me something," Amara said, curled against Marcus's side. "What's the best part of all this for you?" Marcus considered the question seriously. "The everyday moments," he said finally. "Helping with homework, making breakfast on Saturday mornings, knowing that when something good happens to one of us, we all get to celebrate together. And when something scary happens, we're all there to face it together." "Like Cairo's broken arm," Amara observed. "Like Cairo's broken arm," Marcus agreed. "But also like when Zara won the art contest last month, or when you got that big client, or when I finally got the work-life balance right. We're a team now, all 4 of us." "I love you," Amara said suddenly, the words carrying 8 years of love, loss, forgiveness, and hope. "I love you too," Marcus replied, meaning it more than he'd ever meant anything. "All 3 of you. More than I knew was possible." As if summoned by their conversation, the porch door opened and 2 small figures in pajamas appeared. "We can't sleep," Cairo announced. "The new house makes different sounds," Zara added by way of explanation. "Would it help if we all stayed together tonight?" Marcus suggested. "Maybe we could drag some blankets into the living room and have an indoor camping night." "Yes," both children exclaimed, their sleep troubles forgotten in the excitement of an unplanned adventure. An hour later, all 4 members of the Ashford family were settled on a nest of blankets and pillows in their new living room, the children nestled between their parents like small, warm anchors to everything that mattered. "Tell us the story again," Zara requested sleepily. "About how you and Mama met the first time." It had become their favorite bedtime story, the tale of their parents' first meeting, first date, and the love that had survived separation and found its way back home. Once upon a time, Marcus began in the storytelling voice he'd perfected over the past few months. There was a brilliant, beautiful woman who could paint colors that didn't even have names. As he spun the familiar tale, Marcus felt the deep contentment that came from being exactly where he belonged. This was success, not the numbers in his bank account or the accolades from business magazines, but the weight of his daughter's head on his shoulder and the sound of his son's sleepy breathing. The warm presence of his wife beside him and the knowledge that tomorrow would bring more moments just like this one. He built an empire worth billions, but his greatest achievement was the family sleeping peacefully around him. Some love stories end with a kiss. Others end with a wedding. But the best love stories, Marcus had learned, end with the quiet understanding that the real adventure is just beginning. And as he watched his wife and children sleep in the soft glow of their new home's lights, Marcus Ashford knew that his greatest success story was still being written, one ordinary, extraordinary day at a time. 5 years later. Saturday morning, the sound of laughter drifted through the kitchen windows as Marcus flipped pancakes on the griddle, watching through the glass as 11-year-old Cairo taught his little sister Lily how to throw a perfect spiral with a foam football. Higher arc, Lily. Cairo called out with the patience of an older brother who'd inherited his father's teaching instincts. Remember what Dad taught us about trajectory. I'm trying. 4-year-old Lily replied with the determined scowl that reminded Marcus so strongly of Amara it made his heart ache with love. Dad, the pancakes are burning, Zara observed from her perch at the kitchen counter, where she was sketching the morning scene with the artistic skill that had earned her recognition in several youth competitions. Thanks, sweetheart, Marcus said, quickly flipping the pancakes before they could char. Is your mom still getting dressed? She's fighting with her hair, Zara replied with the knowing wisdom of an 11-year-old girl. She said the humidity is making it rebellious. Marcus grinned. Some things never changed. Amara's relationship with her hair on humid Saturday mornings had been a source of gentle frustration since their first apartment together. Good morning, beautiful family. Marcus turned to see Amara entering the kitchen, her hair successfully tamed and her face glowing with the particular happiness that came from Saturday mornings with nowhere urgent to be. Good morning, gorgeous, Marcus replied, stealing a quick kiss as she moved past him to pour coffee. Sleep well. Better than I have in weeks, Amara admitted. No client emergencies, no deadline pressure, just us. Her marketing firm had grown into one of the most respected agencies in the city, but she'd learned to set boundaries that protected family time. They both had. Success meant something different now than it had in their younger, more driven years. Mama, Lily burst through the back door with the boundless energy of a 4-year-old who'd been awake for exactly 17 minutes. Watch me throw. Cairo taught me the spiral thing. I want to see this spiral thing, Amara said seriously, accepting the foam football from her youngest daughter. Show me what you've learned. As Lily demonstrated her new skill with the intense concentration that seemed to be a family trait, Marcus felt the familiar swell of gratitude that had become his default emotional state. They'd built this. Together. A family that laughed easily, supported each other unconditionally, and faced every challenge as a team. Dad, Cairo said as they gathered around the table for breakfast, can we work on the programming project after breakfast? I think I figured out the bug in the motion sensor code. Absolutely, Marcus replied, ruffling his son's hair. But first, let's hear about everyone's plans for today. Art class at 2 p.m., Zara reported dutifully. And Mrs. Peterson wants to talk to you and Mama about the advanced placement program. Playground. Lily announced with the enthusiasm of someone whose Saturday plans were beautifully simple. I need to finish the marketing proposal for the Morrison Group, Amara added, but that shouldn't take more than an hour. And I, Marcus said, looking around the table at his family, plan to spend the day with my favorite people in the world. We're your only people, Cairo pointed out with logic that made everyone laugh. That's what makes you my favorites, Marcus replied. After breakfast, as they settled into their Saturday routine, Cairo and Marcus bent over programming code in the study, Zara painting in her art corner, Lily building elaborate block cities, and Amara curled up with her laptop. Marcus paused to absorb the scene. This was what success looked like. Not the magazine covers or the business awards gathering dust in his office, but the sound of his children's concentrated breathing as they pursued their passions, the sight of his wife's thoughtful expression as she crafted marketing strategies, the knowledge that every day brought new opportunities to be present for the moments that mattered. His phone buzzed with a text from his assistant about an urgent acquisition opportunity that required immediate attention. Marcus glanced at it, then at his son's excited face as the motion sensor finally responded correctly to his code. Richardson can handle it, Marcus said, silencing his phone and returning his attention to what truly mattered. Handle what? Cairo asked absently, focused on his programming. Nothing important, Marcus replied, meaning it completely. Now, show me how you solve that sensor problem. Later that evening, after art classes and playground adventures and family dinner, Marcus and Amara sat on their back porch watching their children catch fireflies in the gathering dusk. Any regrets? Amara asked softly, a question that had become ritual between them. Only one, Marcus replied, as he always did. That it took me so long to figure out what really mattered. But you figured it out, Amara said, leaning against his shoulder. That's what counts. We figured it out, Marcus corrected gently. All of us, together. As the stars began to appear overhead, and their children's laughter filled the evening air, Marcus Ashford reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From the coffee shop encounter that changed everything to this moment of perfect domestic happiness, every choice had led them home to each other. Success, he'd learned, wasn't about what you could buy, it was about what you couldn't live without. And as he held his wife close and watched their children create magic out of summer evening and mason jars, Marcus knew he was the richest man alive. Some stories end with triumph in boardrooms. Others end with dramatic declarations of love. But the best stories, the ones that really matter, end with the quiet recognition that happiness isn't a destination you reach, but a choice you make every single day. And Marcus Ashford had chosen well. What an incredible journey! From a chance encounter in a coffee shop to a family reunited by love, second chances, and the courage to choose what truly matters. This story reminds us that success isn't measured in dollars, but in the laughter of our children and the love of our family. Sometimes the greatest achievements happen not in boardrooms, but in playgrounds and kitchen tables and quiet Saturday mornings where ordinary moments become extraordinary memories. If this story touched your heart, if you believe that it's never too late to make the right choice, if you think love deserves a second chance, smash that like button, share this story with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Luxe Love Chronicles with Mr. Wentworth for more stories that celebrate the triumph of love over fear, family over fortune, and hope over heartbreak. Tell us in the comments. What would you choose, a billion-dollar empire or breakfast with people who love you? Sometimes the most important question isn't whether we can have it all, but whether we know what all really means. Until next time, remember that the greatest love stories aren't about finding the perfect person. They're about choosing to love imperfectly, forgive completely, and build something beautiful together, one ordinary day at a time. This is Mr. Wentworth, reminding you that luxury isn't what you own, it's who you love and who loves you back. Keep choosing love, keep choosing family, and keep believing that every ending can be a new beginning.